One of my main concerns for young people today is this idea of spiritual disorientation. All of our young people today, they're wrestling a plethora of ideas um, in university, in high school, in academia, and also in corporate society. One of my main concerns for young people today is this idea of spiritual disorientation. And really what I'm referring to is, our young people are swirling around in all of these ideas, all these controversial, really what I consider to be satanic ideas. I went to go hear Jordan Peterson speak maybe a year or so ago, and he said something that I immediately wrote down. And most people know Jordan as being this Harvard psychologist. He said, in previous eras, idolatry was always the worship of a wood or metal image. He said, but today, idolatry is the worship of ideas, ideatry. And, from the time our kids are 10 and 11 years old, they're wrestling with all of these types of ideas on gender and sex. And there's a whole host of other things, but those are the big issues right now. And I really want our young people and our young adults to know who they are in God. And the only way for that to happen is you have to trust the instruments. You have to trust the Word of God. You've got to look upon Jesus, who's the author and the finisher of our faith. In the aviation world, there's this idea of spatial disorientation. And as a commercial pilot, I can speak to it a little bit. But if you have someone close their eyes and put their head down, if they're sitting in the cockpit with you, and you put the airplane into a series of unusual attitudes, put the airplane way up in the air and then drop it down and turn it left and right, and you ask them, is the airplane going up or down? They cannot accurately tell you which way the airplane's going because all of their senses are in disagreement. And almost 100% of the time, you may feel like the airplane's going up, but you're really in a dive towards the ground. And so we call this spatially disorientation or spatial disorientation. And so the way you overcome that is you trust the instruments, you trust the flight instruments. You have a scan that you have to basically use, and at the moment you quit using those instruments, you're going to fall prey to spatial disorientation. So I really want young people and young adults to know, especially in college and high school, that you have to have a word relationship. If you do not have a word relationship, if you're not looking unto Jesus, who is the author and the finisher of your faith, there is no chance that you're going to be able to make it in living for God. You may survive a month or two, maybe you might be able to eke out a year, but you have to have a word relationship with Jesus Christ. You have to have a man of God in your life that's giving you spiritual direction and counsel. And I'll end with this. There's some things that we use. There's a little mnemonic that we use in the aviation industry. We call it the 5 C's, and I've used it spiritually. If you're flying in the middle of the night and you become lost in an airplane, we say you must climb, call, confess, comply. And the 5th is conserve. Don't have much to do with the spiritual, but the first 4 are the ones I want to talk about. You got to climb spiritually. If you realize that you're spiritually disoriented, the first thing you need to do is climb. The second thing you need to do is call on God and call on your pastor. Those are 2 very important things. Typically, most young adults and young people, the last thing we want to do is tell our pastor that we really need some help. We always wait until it's too late before we finally get our man of God involved, or for that matter, even go and pray. So I want you to climb. I want you to call. I want you to take and comply with what the man of God asks you to do, or with what the Lord has you to do. So many times we'll go to our man of God and we'll ask for counsel, we'll ask for advice, and then we never implement it. And so I've found that you have to implement whatever the man of God is telling you or whatever the word of God is telling you. And the last is confess. You want to be willing to acknowledge that you really do have a problem if you're in a season of disorientation. One of the hazardous attitudes in aviation is deniability. You just keep denying that you have a problem. But I think it's very important that you look at the situation that you're going through spiritually, acknowledge, hey, I think I got an issue here, and really reach out, climb, call, confess, and comply. If you'll do that, you'll be all right and you'll make it in living for God.